everyone, and welcome to Dear Day. Drop everything and read. Thank you for joining me if you are joining me live. Today, I am going to read an excerpt from the book, We Had to Be Brave, Escaping the Nazis on the Kindertransport. If you don't know anything about the Kindertransport, it was during World War II that because of the persecution of Jews in Europe, people organized a train or a transport to get Jewish children out of Europe and into England. So this book is about a little bit about the history of it, but also some first-person narrative about what the experience was like. So today I am going to read you one of the voices. So this is a true story, someone's true experience. In this book itself, it has, again, a mixture of those historical elements, but also some really great first-person point of view. It includes some great pictures to go along. I am going to read you an excerpt about Kristallnacht, otherwise known as the Night of Broken Glass. Each family's experience of Kristallnacht and its aftermath was different. Lisa Seddon remembered men coming into her house, located in a quiet suburb of Vienna. Her family lived on the top floor of a 3-story house with access to a terraced rooftop where they made giant snowmen in winter. They also had a pretty back garden with a cherry tree and roses. It was a lovely place to live. But that night, footsteps echoed in the hall, and the men burst in, pushing her and her mother down the stairs and into the street, where the brown shirts had scrawled the words, "Jewish swine." The Nazis brought out a bucket and handbrush and forced Lisa's mother to scrub away the words. They made Lisa stand by her side and watch. When it was done, the brown shirts just laughed and wrote the same insult again, farther down the street. And once again, they made Lisa's mother clean it. This went on and on for what seemed an eternity, Lisa remembered. Once her mother looked straight at her and shot her a warning glance. Her silent message was, "Don't cry." I didn't. A few days later, Lisa and her mother saw SS troopers waiting at the end of the street. Lisa knew why they were there. One of their neighbors, a non-Jewish shopkeeper, had told Lisa's mother the Nazis had been into her shop, asking about Lisa's father. Lisa's father didn't want to be arrested. Instead of coming home, they hid under a small bridge near their house. Lisa and her brother had played there before. It was a secret hollow full of trees and thick shrubs. Lisa was the one who brought her father food. Her mother thought that as a small child, she'd been the most inconspicuous, the least likely to be stopped. To reach her father, Lisa had to climb over their garden wall and get out the back way. She had to try to act normal if she met any German soldiers. When she reached the bridge, Lisa learned to slip into the hiding place as quickly as possible. In addition to food, Lisa carried messages from her mother. "I cannot write them down for you. It's too dangerous," her mother instructed. "You must memorize them and repeat them to Papa. He must know that I am doing everything to get the permit so that we can all leave the country as soon as possible." Lisa was frightened, but she did everything exactly right. The encounters with my father in that cold, dark burrow under the bridge will remain engraved like tongues of flame in the back of my mind, impossible to be forgotten, she wrote later. She never forgot how sad and desolate he looked. Sometimes I still see him in my dreams, just as he was then. I would throw myself into his arms, not understanding, not believing what was happening. Her father tried to reassure her that all would be well, but he was caught and sent to Dachau. Lisa's family was fortunate, more fortunate than millions of others. Although it would be 8 long years, Lisa would see her father again. Frida was only 5 when Hitler annexed Austria in March 1938. That fall, Frida and her 9-year-old brother, Ephraim, were throwing snowballs near their home in Vienna when, quite by accident, Ephraim hit a boy who happened to be passing by. The boy was wearing black jack boots and an outfit of a Hitler Youth. He and 2 of his friends took their anger out on little Frida, piling snow on her head and taunting her. The Vienna of my childhood contained no waltzes or polkas, no romantic visions, either real or imagined, said Frida. One of my first vivid recollections, chilling in every sense, is being buried in the snow by 3 of Hitler's young hooligans. By this time, the Nazis had closed their Jewish school, forcing Frida and her 3 siblings to stay home in the family's frigid apartment. Frida's father, a devout Jewish scholar who had taught in the school, tried to keep warm as he pored over his books. Frida remembered him wearing his overcoat and drinking endless glasses of hot tea. Just as the Nazis had made Lisa's mother scrub the streets, they forced Frida's parents to do the same. Nazis also burned her father's prayer books, throwing them into a bonfire, while non-Jewish neighbors cheered. At one point, Frida realized that the building's janitor and his daughter were jeering along with the others. She had once been her friend, but friendship had disappeared. Frida's mother ran a small grocery shop, which brown shirts stormed too. First, they break the windows. Then they ransack the shelves. My parents are forced to sweep up the broken glass and debris. There is no more food left, Frida said. Frida's mother and her eldest sister, Erica, took saucepans and waited in line at a Jewish community center to get meals for the family. Hearing the healthy Jewish men were being rounded up and arrested, Frida's mother put her husband to bed, and though Frida was never sure how her mother did it, managed to make him look and feel ill and hot. When the Nazis came for him, he appeared so sick they left without him. Rescue worker Norbert Wollheim was 25 and would come to play an important part in the Kindertransport. In November 1938, he had just completed a welding course in Berlin. As he came home onto the street after his final examination, someone told him that synagogues were burning. And just for context, this is a picture that's in the book of a synagogue burning on the night of broken glass. I went to my synagogue, where I had been married, and I saw that the flames were coming out from the roof, from the cupola. The fire engines were standing by doing nothing, only protecting the buildings next to it, so that the fire shouldn't extend to them. Norbert stood frozen, listening to German people around him gleefully exclaim that this was what Jews deserved. I couldn't comprehend it. I saw it, but I couldn't digest, not intellectually and not emotionally. I had read about pogroms in Middle Ages, but when we're living in a modern age, I had believed in the goodness of man. Could this be possible? Ernest Frontheim went to school as usual, taking the elevated train from his family's apartment in Berlin. When I entered my classroom, some of my classmates were telling horror stories of what they had seen on their way to school, like smashed store windows of Jewish opened shops, looting mobs, and even burning synagogues. The students fell silent as their teacher entered. The teacher announced that the school would close for the day. The teachers couldn't guarantee the students' safety. He dismissed the pupils and warned them to go straight home, not to stop, and not to attract attention. As he headed back home to the train, Ernest passed the synagogue, his family's place of worship. He saw smoke rising from it. On an impulse he couldn't explain, Ernest got off at the next stop and raced back to look. Firefighters were hosing down adjacent buildings. The air was filled with the acrid smell of smoke. I was wedged in the middle of a hostile crowd, which was in an ugly mood, shouting anti-Semitic slogans. I was completely hypnotized by the burning synagogue and was totally oblivious to any possible danger, he said. I thought of the many times I had attended services there and listened to the sermons, all of which have fortified my soul during the difficult years of persecution. And then Ernest witnessed the awful spectacle of mob violence. Someone shouted that a Jewish family lived in a ground floor apartment across the street. The crowd moved toward the building, and people began beating their fists against the door. In my imagination, I pictured a frightened family hiding in a room as far as possible from the entrance door, hoping and praying that the door would withstand, and I prayed with them. I vividly remember the crashing, violent noise of splintering wood, followed by deadly silence. Then suddenly, wild cries of triumph. An elderly, bald-headed man was brutally pushed through the crowd while fists rained down on him from all sides. Ernest heard one man in the crowd shout a protest. How cowardly! So many against one! He was immediately attacked by others. The Jewish man from the apartment was pushed to the ground. A police car arrived, and he was put in and driven off. He would be arrested, not protected. Ernest turned away. I left this scene of horror completely drained, incredulous. Ernest's parents and sister were arrested in 1942. Ernest, who was working at the time, was able to obtain false identity papers and later went into hiding along with his future wife, Margot, and her parents. Just before they were turned in by the Nazi sympathizer, they were given new hiding places by an anti-Nazi German army officer named Heinz Drossel and his family. Frontheim survived the war and moved to the United States, where he became a distinguished research scientist at the University of Michigan. Before his death in 2008, Heinz was recognized for several acts of resistance to the Nazis during the war. And there's lots more of these first-person accounts, all about different times during the war, but especially about their experience in the Kindertransport. And just to share with you a couple more of the pictures from Kristallnacht, which is the night that they're talking about. And if you listened, they were talking about how they were hosing down the adjacent buildings so that the German-owned or the non-Jewish-owned businesses and homes would not be burned. So this excellent book, We Had to Be Brave, is available here in the library if you wanted to read a little bit more, learn a little bit more about the Holocaust, especially in the wake of Holocaust Remembrance Day, which is next Tuesday, April 18th. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for reading today, and enjoy the rest of your Dear Day.